Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 3 of the Let's Start a Cult podcast. I'm Kevin Feasy, and this is...
Matt Stevens. Hello.
You sounded like you're doing an interview. I like it, yeah. So, what have you been up to, Matt?
I've not been doing a lot, really. Can't go out, so watching too much stuff on the telly and messing about with my guitar in different tunings at the moment. So I'm in C, G at the bottom, and then normal tuning at the top. And I've been playing about with stuff like that.
Where did you get that from?
I just kept tuning the notes until I got an interesting chord, and then I was doing a load of Lydian stuff. I wanted a droney sort of low note, so I could play like Lydian runs over the top of it, and it's okay. But the trouble with the Lydian is a lot of it sounds like Carvis does a lot with Knife World, and Joe Satriani and Steve Vai use Lydian all the time. So and Zappa as well. There's a real Zappery sort of sound to it. So it's a nice sound. But it can sound a little bit like, oh, you're sounding like these people.
You've gone a bit Vai.
Yeah, I got a bit Vai.
I've been mostly looking up obscure Polish science fiction films on YouTube. Well, not just science fiction films, but other films as well. I found, you ever heard of a film called On the Silver Globe?
No.
Or On a Silver Globe? Yeah, it's a science fiction film made in the 70s by a Polish director, but he was never allowed to finish it.
Okay.
Entirely. Yeah. The government shut him down. But if you look that up on YouTube, it looks pretty cool. It looks quite strange.
Have you seen that new thing on Amazon? What's it called? Hold on. What's it called? Tales from the Loop.
No, based on a load of artwork, isn't it?
Yeah. Looks really, really good. I'm going to check that out next, I think.
There you go. That's Matt's evening sorted out.
I looked at the Fierce and the Dead group. Yeah. I said, has anyone got any questions? And people put a load of questions up, which was great. So I think what we'll do a questions and answers episode rather than do it in each one. If we do a Q&A episode a bit later on, all right? So keep them on the group.
Were they fascinating, sort of Jeremy Paxman-esque, scathing, searching questions?
No, it's just the usual weird stuff. But we'll just we'll look at those later.
Great. Okay, brilliant. All right, well, we'll get round to that. So let's get on to it then. So this episode, we're going to be talking about the On VHS EP, which is really kind of when the band kind of started properly. Yeah,
it's when Steve joined, and we started playing as a band rather than a studio project thing. And so we basically, after finishing Morecambe, we attempted to play some of the material live. So we started rehearsing as a 3-piece and kind of realised we needed an extra person. And Steve was our friend who was a very good guitar player and a very nice man. And therefore, he was our first choice, really.
Yeah. And so then, we became, a proper real life band. And I think that's what it was, wasn't it? On VHS very much came around from being in rehearsals for the getting the Morecambe stuff to be able to play live, and then inevitably we just started writing.
Yeah, we just had a few riffs, and we were just jamming those riffs and seeing. Having Steve there was a bit of a revelation because I realised we could do stuff with 2 guitars, and he could play one part and I could play another part, and we could do sort of a lot of those sort of Fripp and blue things and those a lot of stuff you hear in sort of different math rocky sort of things. So we tried a lot of sort of these. You can hear there's a lot of that sort of math rocky sort of one guitar in one time signature, one guitar in another time signature thing, that sort of end of frame by frame thing. And then you've got the more sort of post rocky stuff. Yeah,
we've never been in fact in any of the bands we've been in, we've never really been sort of like somebody's lead guitarist, somebody's rhythm guitar. It's always been guitars, isn't it? Everybody does their own thing.
I'm quite happy to play any instrument that will work for the song. So I've got an old tape recorder, and you can make some really cool sounds with that. And if that's what it takes to make the right sound for the track, that's the right instrument for the track. That's the bottom line. That the actually important thing is to get the right sound for the job, not show off or show virtuosity. I mean, there's certain things I do on the guitar that are quite distinct. So I tend to like to try and have guitar on stuff, but I think that whatever instrument you does the job. He's fine with me.
Exactly. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Everybody likes a whittle from now and then, right? Everybody likes to, foot on the monitor.
I do, yeah. And as you know, if we do a gig, I will do a bit of the old whittled at the end. But sadly, I'm not allowed to do much of that in our songs. So it's, that avenue of pleasure is close to me. So I have to do it at the end of songs live.
There's been a few times, hasn't there, where you've looked across the stage at me and there's just me or Stuart or Steve just shaking our heads at you.
Stop it. Stop it.
He's gone. He's gone. He's gone. Well,
you see, I grew up with Paul Gilbert and, all those sort of guitarists. So I was into that sort of speed whittle guitar. No, I didn't grow up with them. But I was into that sort of music and I was into a lot of that whittly guitar playing, a lot of metal guitar playing and quite, Randy Rhoads and all that sort of stuff. And then I got into like indie rock and stuff. But I grew up initially with those sort of sounds, and it was something that, I still like and I still like doing.
I remember all that stuff. What was the record label? Shrapnel?
Shrapnel, yeah, with that's Tony McAlpine. I remember when I first met Carvus, because we both had the same Vinnie Moore album. It's true. So Carvus has got a bit of a whittly Shrapnel past as well.
I think most guitarists have.
Well, and then it was Voivod, and then Sonic Youth, and all the other. You realise there's different types of virtuosity. So Thurston Moore is a virtuoso guitarist in his own way. Robert Fripp, and you get into all that stuff. Hillage, or Ed from Monster X, or Johnny Greenwood, and they're all virtuoso, brilliant guitarists, but they're not playing at 500 miles an hour. And I think there's something you realise as you get older, isn't it?
Yeah, I do remember distinctly thinking when I was about sort of 14, thinking that if I could just grow my hair long, wear some spandex, get a sort of super strap, get a Floyd Rose, then I would definitely get a girlfriend.
I think that was the way to do it. Yeah, it
was a lie.
It was a lie. Yes, very much. So,
it was the exact opposite.
Yes, very much.
So anyway. On VHS, so we just started writing stuff in rehearsals. I mean, you came in with quite a lot of riffs, and that's what it was really, wasn't it? It was just riffs. And I think because Part 1 and Morecambe had been such kind of successful experiments, even though we were sort of becoming more of a traditional kind of band, I think we still wanted to keep that improvisational feel to it. So my recollection, my rememberings, is that we still didn't have finished arrangements when we went in for this one. There's a reoccurring theme here, isn't there? That we're just not finishing songs before we go into the studio.
Sometimes we finish stuff, but yeah, we tend to get early on. We didn't really have a lot done, did we? But we do now. We tend to work it all out now. But back then, we didn't have the lengths of the sections worked out particularly well. I know that you were signalling when we were recording some of it for the changes, weren't you?
Yeah, that's right. For regular listeners who may remember, I work as an audio engineer, still do from time to time, and I used to own a studio. And I think Part 1, Morecambe, and also on VHS, we were very lucky to be able to record them in decent studios. Part 1 was recorded in my own studio, and Morecambe and On VHS were both recorded at Livingston Studios. And because of the very nice people that I knew, we actually managed to record Morecambe and On VHS. We got mates rates. So I think that may have had something to do with the fact that we was a bit blasé about going in without finished tracks, because we weren't really burning money. It was just kind of, let's go in and just see what happens, because I've been given this time. Maybe that's something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe later on we were a bit more urgent when we knew the clock was ticking. I don't know.
I think we were just trying to just crack on with what we were doing. I think, there wasn't a sense of urgency. It wasn't like we had loads of gigs set up and we had to get it done in time for the gigs, and we didn't have a label. There was no sort of outside pressures at all, was there?
No, it felt very, very liberating. For considering the bands we'd have been in the past, it just felt like, well, we've done these things and people seem to like it, so maybe we just carry on doing what we're doing. It seemed to work nicely.
Do it for the joy of it, yeah.
Exactly. So as I said, on VHS, recorded in Studio 2 at Livingston, much smaller studio, but still has the wonderful benefit of having 3 separate rooms. So again, I was in the control room, Steve had his own room, Matt had his own room, Stuart had his own room, and we all had windows between us so we could all see each other. So we were still very much set up almost in a kind of like a live format. I remember going in thinking I didn't want to make kind of like a straight "this is rock." I wanted, that kind of strange thing. I'd been listening to a lot of more esoteric rock bands. So even some of like the more experimental modern black metal bands and things like that, I really liked their sounds. It wasn't that kind of really programmed, metronomed kind of thing. The guitars, it wasn't just that straight Mesa kind of sound. Everything was a little bit different. So if I remember rightly, Steve played all this through a Fender Twin.
Yeah, and if you listen to the first two recordings, the EP and the Morecambe album, there's not that much distorted guitar on it. It's a lot of clean guitar. But when Steve came in, Steve's more of a Smashing Pumpkins, Queens of the Stone Age, that sort of guitarist. And he brought a lot of that in with it. So there's a lot more of that fuzzy guitar sounds on it.
I mean, I don't think we can completely blame Steve for it. For those who don't know, our drummer, Stuart Marshall, in his own words, has two settings, on or off. And so to sort of keep pace with Stuart, and especially his volume, when you get in the ring with him, it tends to be things get out of hand. So I think that had an element to it as well. Once we started getting the rehearsal room, everything kind of started getting a bit more into that, the distorted realm.
Funnily enough, I think Stuart as a drummer is massively, he's got a lot more dynamic range now, hasn't he? He's in the last 5 years, he's probably the player who's evolved most out of all of us. But,
that's very true.
Certainly dynamically, there's a lot more going on with him now. He's consistently got better as a drummer ever since I met him, actually. He's a really good musician, Stu.
Yeah, he's getting the hang of it, isn't he?
Getting there now. Only 30 years.
So anyway, there we were, Studio 2. And yes, as I was saying, some of the sounds, I couldn't get the details of Stuart because I couldn't get hold of him. But I remember Stuart at that time was playing. He just brought himself, it was some kind of weird vintage drum kit. But I mean, it made him sound, when he first got it, it made him sound a bit like Bill Ward. It wasn't, like a modern rock kit. And I seem to remember that the snare was quite deep. And I think that kind of dictated a lot of the tone for this particular EP. I guess you could actually link it to what we're doing now, that we're still very much fans of what some people call like the psychedelic genre, So even though we definitely had like quite heavy riffs, we were still listening to a lot of Flaming Lips, a lot of the old 60s stuff, 13th Floor Elevators and, Love and all this kind of stuff, and all these kind of, more stranger sounds.
I was always into Smiley Beach Boys and, that sort of stuff, and weird sort of things we like, really, because there's always the sort of power pop thing, there's always the psychedelic thing, there's always the really extreme metal thing like Carcass and, like that, and Celtic Frost, and then also the, I always loved thrash metal and death metal and that's, really heavy stuff, and then the jazz rock stuff, the Mad Vision and King Crimson thing, so... Bob Mould and American Hardcore as well, Dead Kennedys and Black Flag and Husker Du. And so it's always all these sort of things, and it all sort of comes together in a sound that's, it's our own thing, I suppose. So, just because we've got quite a lot of different influences.
Yeah, and I think as well, one of the big things on this particular recording is that Matt dug out his whammy pedal.
Oh, yeah.
On this one, like the wah was to Kirk Hammett, the whammy pedal was to you.
It's on every track, isn't it? Because I was Loveless by My Bloody Valentine. It was a big record.
That's right.
I'd only just discovered My Bloody Valentine. There's a track they did that sounds like Voivod, and that's how I got into them. And then I got into Loveless. You Made Me Realise is the Voivody one, and then I got into Loveless, which was the following recording they made.
Yeah, amazing.
There's so many amazing guitar sounds, and so that a lot of that whammy pedal stuff was me trying to sound like Kevin Shields on a Telecaster bass and failing. The whammy pedal was also Radiohead. So you've got the different sounds. The whammy pedal is there's the detune sound, which is the My Bloody Valentine sound. There's the octave up sound, which is the Radiohead sound, and then also a lot of the mathy sort of bands that had just started coming out. I'd sort of just got into around that time. We're using a lot of the octave up sounds and a lot of the swipe up. You can actually hear this. The whammy going up to the octave. Yeah. So a lot of those, I think, I'm not sure if I'd heard Cleft then, but people like Cleft, and those sort of really interesting. There's really interesting new bands coming through as well. So
yeah, I think most people would associate the sound of the whammy with for those non-nerdy people out there, it's that Tom Morello Rage Against the Machine kind of thing.
Or on Radiohead, what's the Radiohead song on the bend?
Oh yes, where the
the Radiohead used it loads on the bend and OK Computer, so it was one of their key sounds on that.
Yeah, if everybody can remember what that song is, please put it in the comments. Let's move on then. So first track, and it's become something. This track has become something that we've literally been playing now for almost 9 years, and it's 666 ... a title come up with by our drummer Stuart Marshall. When his wry sense of humour, and this, I remember you bringing this riff into the rehearsal room, and straight away it was just like, this is a great riff. Everybody who played that riff to, everybody went, that's a great riff. And I know that you kind of got this from the chap that was actually our old guitar teacher, Richard Beaumont.
Yeah, he had a thing where he'd do like a blues riff, and then he put this these triad arpeggio things, so you'd have like which is typically Beaumont. I mean, he's very, which sort of goes back to the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and it's quite proggy sort of stuff. So that's how that riff sort of came into about, because Mr. Beaumont was someone who taught me and Kev, and he was really into the Mahavishnu Orchestra and Alan Holdsworth, so he got us really into that sort of stuff, and Bruford, and he was into Shostakovich, and he was into some Zappa, and he liked some prog, like bits of King Crimson and stuff, but his thing was sort of jazz rock. And I think for years what I thought was prog was actually jazz rock. So
That's true.
I didn't actually know what prog was. I thought prog was, the Mahavishnu and King Crimson read, and I didn't really know about the symphonic stuff. It's not that I didn't like it; I just didn't know about it, and because it was possible to be ignorant then, because we didn't have the internet, and I just didn't know. So he got us into all that sort of stuff. So that's where a lot of the funny notes and odd playing comes from. From my perspective, is having years of guitar lessons with him, basically.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting as well, because we very much grew up with, as we were saying earlier, all the shred guitarists and metal and all this kind of stuff, and we were very much into thrash and quite punky metal, like the new wave of British heavy metal stuff and all this kind of thing. So if you're into that kind of stuff, and then you hear John McLaughlin play on any of the Mahavishnu records, I mean, he's ferocious, and it appealed to us straight away. It wasn't all this. It is amazing technique, but it didn't seem to be about that. There's loads of wrong notes, and there's loads of missed notes, and it's it's slightly out of time, and it just sounds fantastically manic. And I think that really appealed to us, didn't it?
Funny enough, Chris Poland from Megadeth was really into the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and you can hear that. The Peace Cells era Megadeth and Mahavishnu Orchestra Awakenings. There's clear links between those particular pieces of music, and there's a certain reckless thrashiness that the Mahavishnu Orchestra had.
Yes,
especially the first Mahavishnu album with Dancer Maya and Awakening and stuff like that. It's just there's such a profoundly angry record, isn't it? And
it really is.
Can you imagine seeing that band? I mean, I know people who saw that band. And it's just they're only together for 18 months, 2 years, not long. They weren't together 2 or 3 years at tops, but they what they achieved in that time was just phenomenal. And for me, it's not the flash playing on the Mahavishnu Orchestra; it's the chord progressions that I love.
Yes,
I love the flash playing, fantastic, but the chord progressions are the thing for me.
I didn't know that about Chris Poland, but it makes a lot of sense. It really does. So 666 ... That's kind of how we got that going. That was a riff Matt brought in, and it really got us up and running straight away. It was something to that instantly sparked with all of us. I think the second section was something we just put together all together, and again, that's as we were saying earlier, you and Steve doing those interlocking guitar parts, which very much became a thing on this EP, because it just sounds bloody great. The middle section, the strange ethereal middle section, was actually a loop, wasn't it? I think that was a loop you played live, because you were still had the older line 6 DL4, and you were using that stuff a lot on your solo stuff, weren't you? And that kind of still found its way onto this EP.
Yeah, I think there's a crossover, wasn't there? I had that loop at the start and then laid it up, and then there's a loop again in the middle, isn't there? So, and then you and Steve worked out that melody line over the top, the linear passage thing, didn't you?
Yeah, totally. So, there you go. 666 ... 6. The next track, Hawaii. Now, this is a song we did play this live for quite a while. I'm not quite sure we ever really got our heads around it. And I remember we did try rehearsing it up for when we played Rosfest, but didn't quite feel right. So I don't think we've ever managed to nail this one. Maybe we'll have another go sometime. But it was something, again, we just wanted to write something quite aggressive, didn't we? And it was kind of our version of death metal or black metal or whatever you want to call it. Those just manic guitars.
I always think of Acid Rain and people like that I used to love, Voivod. And then it's got an overlapping Fripp Ballou guitar part in the middle, that electric marimba thing. And then it's got a weird Faith No More ending.
I remember thinking, what to do, because we just had two parts, didn't we? And, it was like, where do we go with this? And what would Faith No More do? That's when this, complete tempo change, the strange whammy bar Hawaiian guitars at the end, which kind of, gave it its name. We're so literal. I think there's some synth overdubs on this one as well, isn't there?
Yeah, I think, is there synth on it?
Yeah.
Is that a synth? Is that a guitar?
I think there's a synth at the beginning. I can't honestly remember, Matt. I remember. I meant, that would have been an overdub.
I can't remember that. I think it is a synth, I think you played that.
Yeah.
When we used to do it live, I think I used to play it.
Yes, you did.
When we did the Stabbing a Dead Horse tour, I did the
Yes.
and then there's a bit at the end where I go and I'm in sixes and the rest of you in four.
Yeah.
So it's a long time since I played. We were really into that thing at the time. One of us doing 6, and one of us doing 4.
Yeah.
One of us doing 5. One of us we're really into that. That's basically from the end of Frame by Frame by King Crimson. And
it was how long can we keep this going?
I always loved that sound. It would go back to that New York 79, 80 thing where, there's people like Steve Reich and that. So we're all standing on the shoulders of giants, as it were. So
absolutely.
Yeah. We're all, I mean, I wouldn't remotely claim to have anything original there, but it just came from wide listening, really, and listening to being inspired by Fripp and Ballou and being, they're brilliant, both brilliant.
Yeah.
musicians.
Oh yeah, very much so. I don't know how many of you out there as well have seen the video that I made. That was myself. I made the video for this, which I don't really know what I was thinking. I just got some visual ideas, and then I managed to get our friends, Martin, who was appears on the Mighty Orange Clock's first album, Martin Winsley, and then also our friend Paul Hickman, who does a lot of the artwork for us. And I managed to convince them to come up with me to Epping Forest in the middle of the night and have a fight. And so there was a few cars that sort of went past us. I mean, they must have thought that's dogging gone wrong, isn't it?
Yeah, it's two middle-aged men in a fight. Yeah, well, we weren't even middle-aged then, were they? We were two reasonably young men then, and they're. But yeah, what was that all about?
Yeah, exactly.
That video is available to watch on YouTube. I'll put the link in the show notes for this in the comments. Yeah. So, but yeah, I like that video. It's quite good.
Yeah, thanks. It's I don't know what I was. I don't know. Sometimes you just get these ideas, don't you? So there we go. That was Hawaii. Then we move on to On VHS. Now, I can't remember how this came about, Matt. I can't remember where this started. Who brought in the first part of this? I'm pretty sure it was you brought in the chords.
Well, I had the overlapping guitar part, the 6. One's in 6 and one's in 4, something like that. And then you had that bass line, and then in the middle we got the melody part. I put the melody over the bass line, and it all sort of drops in and out. So it's quite a DJ Shadowy sort of thing where Talking Heads, but very bass and drum orientated. And less of the less sort of guitar driven, but I think I had that initial bit, and then you had the bass line, and we rebuilt the whole song around that bass line, as I remember. Yeah,
that sounds about right. I mean, the bass line. I'm for those who don't know, pretty much all of the band is, but I'm a massive Talking Heads fan, and Tina Weymouth is definitely one of my favourite bass players, and I love that kind of Peter Gabriel does a lot of it as well. That slightly that rhythmic, melodic kind of bass lines, quite an African thing on for a lot of like the Afrobeat music. I know it's quite a big genre, but there you go. But yeah, I think that kind of ended up coming out of that, and I really like the pattern that Stuart plays on that as well. It's just not quite normal.
Funny enough, listening back to this EP, because I'm so disconnected from it, and you should listen back, you don't remember the bits on it. And I really like it. I'm amazed how much I like it, because it doesn't feel like something I'd done. So you can enjoy it as an observer rather than a participant. So I don't hear normally after you've just recorded something, all you hear is the errors and the things that could have been better. But now I hear it as as something that I wasn't part of, because I can barely remember doing it. So it becomes something you can enjoy. You know what I mean? Once again, it's because it's such a long time ago.
Yeah, there you go. Well, the benefits of having a terrible memory.
Yeah, there is that.
I seem to remember it was quite intricate to put together, because the way it all sat, and then it just descends into noise rock like we normally do.
Always has to. All the bands we've ever had, we used to do bassy stuff that was really melodic at the start and then have a heavy ending. And I think we've kind of learned to do less. It's probably, if you listen to a lot of our stuff, it tends to be quieter at the start and then heavy at the end. And that's probably something, that is easy to get into a pattern.
Yes, true. Very true. Very true. Very true. Well, there you go. That was on VHS. I've got no idea why we called it on VHS. Can't remember who came up with that name. Probably you.
Don't remember
but
that.
No idea. I think it was some sort of a pun. There's The Fierce and the Dead on VHS. But who knows? Who knows?
Weak pun at that. Yeah, I vaguely remember. Part 3, which is the continuation of part 1 and part 2, fairly obviously. And I've been listening to that quite a bit recently, actually, because I've just rediscovered it. And once again, I don't really remember it that well. It's really, I really like it. It's kind of the direction I want to go in with the stuff we're working on now. It's got a lot of that sort of feel about it. It's got there's a sense of Floydy calm to it. Quite Pink Floyd, quite post-rocky, and then it goes all Smashing Pumpkins. And I really like the whammy parts on it. I really like that. There's some bits where it's like melody guitar parts. There's some really nice note choices on there as well.
Yeah.
Without going sort of flash and stuff. So we had a rough structure in the studio, and then I think you were nodding us through the sections, weren't you?
Yeah. So I remember this quite distinctly. We had, I think you wrote pretty much all of this, the parts, and there's only 2 or 3 basic parts, but we set up live, and this is very much like we did Morecambe, and we just sort of nodded the changes as we felt. And I know Stuart was very much controlling the dynamics, and again, we played together for so long, myself, Matt and Stuart, and Steve just kind of slots into that really easily, that we feel quite comfortable controlling things dynamically on the fly, as it were. And I seem to remember that we had these sections where you were going to go off and do melody parts, which weren't written. They were as you played them in that take. And then the dynamics of the song were kind of dictated by us listening to each other and just, deciding when we're going to start building into the next section, when it felt right. And I'm pretty sure, in fact, I'm 100% certain that this is one take. There was some overdubs in doubling up some guitars and things like that, but the guitars and everything, I think, is all one take. I think it's as we played it there and then.
Yeah, you can tell that as a guitarist, I was doing a lot of improvisation stuff then, because the improvisation seems really confident. It's the time I was doing lots of solo gigs, and I got really cocky doing improvised stuff. I think I was doing like 40, 50 solo gigs a year.
Yes.
I used to do a thing with a loop pedal and acoustic guitar, and it's basically going all over the country. This is the peak of me doing solo gigs. And I used to do online, like people do now. Like there's all these people doing these sort of streaming gigs and stuff, and that was something I used to do 2010, 2011. I used to do a lot of that. And I think because you do a lot of that loop-based improvisation, you get really good at stacking arpeggios up and really sort of good at improvising. Like you can hear that the improvisation is a lot more confident than I'd probably be doing it now, just because I was so practiced. So it sounded like the note choices were really confident, and really like when I was listening to it again today, it was like, oh, I don't know whether I would have done it like that now, but I really like it. I think it's really There's some note choices that are really interesting, and there's a lot of space in improvisation as well. So there's a lot of confidence there that I haven't necessarily got as a player at the moment. So that's something I'd like to work on when we're playing again now. So it just makes you realise, if you work hard, you can get to that level. Then they've got that big fuzz riff at the end, which is Steve with a fuzz pedal, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the for those who want to know about these things, that's the Zvex Mastertron, a pedal that's fantastic. It just sounds massive, and I still use it on the bass now. But yeah, all of what Matt just said is pretty much spot on. Yeah. So just to be clear, Matt, you invented streaming gigs in 2010.
That is true.
That is true. There we go. Yeah, just wanted to clarify that point.
Just to clarify that I did it first, and to be honest, I think it's slightly cheeky to see other people do it, but some people don't even mention me when they do it, so it's just slightly.
Don't even credit you.
It's galling, to be honest. I mean,
yeah,
it's like they didn't forget Neil Armstrong, did they? It's like.
Exactly.
When I first came up with the idea, I mean, it was,
innovative.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, it's it's good that people do it now. But at the time, it was seen as somewhat eccentric to do it. It seemed a bit odd to do those sort of streaming shows. But actually, people say to me they first heard me and got into the Fierce and the Dead stuff because of those streaming gigs. So, I think it was something that people used to watch, and there's a bit of I've always been about building community over making money, which is probably not the best way to go about things. But I think that it's more important to grow an audience, and then eventually one day there is a hope we might be able to make some money. But that's not the focus. The focus of making art and building community. And I think if you could do those two things, maybe one day you might be able to make some money over it. You might be able to play bigger shows. You might be able to do that, but that's not the problem. Because around this time, there was Prog magazine was coming out, wasn't it? And so we could have gone, I tell you what, let's try and sound a bit like Porcupine Tree or sound like Yes or something. And we might have got us, might have done all right. We might have been slightly more popular, but we wouldn't have done that because it would have took away the fun from something that we enjoy doing. So,
well, also,
you can't just, we wouldn't have been able to do. We're not good enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We literally couldn't have done it.
We're not good enough, no.
Yeah, that's one of my favourite quotes from an old heavy metal documentary of one of the first lineups of Napalm Death, and when Lee Dorian says, well, I don't, with this style of music, I don't think really I could sing any other way over it. And then the drummer just goes, well, you can't sing, can you?
Oh, I love Lee Dorian. Oh, yeah, I met Lee Dorian, actually. Judy Dybel. Yeah, Judy Dybel introduced me to him from Fairport Convention.
How about that? Yes. Look at that.
That's a double name drop. Double name drop. When I was hanging out with Lee Dorian the other day, who introduced you to him? Oh, my friend Judy Dybel from Fairport Convention. Yeah, clang. But it was quite nice. It's a nice man.
If anybody wants to keep track of the name drops, we'll try and increase it as time goes on.
We'll whack them up, yeah.
That's part 3.
That's all of it, isn't it?
And I seem to remember just saying, because you were improvising over that big fuzz riff at the end, in the studio, we just kept going. And then when I came to mix the whole thing, I just thought, I'm just going to leave it all. I just thought, why not?
Yeah, it's 7 minutes long, but I think it's all right. I don't think it's no messing about, and it evolves melodically and stuff. I mean, I'm the first person to criticise my own playing, but on that, it sounds like we're not messing about. It sounds like we're actually developing melodic lines, which is, not just playing notes for the sake of it. It sounds like it's actually moving towards composition, isn't it? So that's quite good.
Yeah, exactly. So, So that's basically the EP, and then we decided we'd better try and make some kind of professional effort. So we were trying to work out what to do for artwork, and then you actually found on the internet, on that there internet, quite a bizarre little video. There was a fella from Canada, and all the video is him, with a little black and white camera, and he's walking around an old abandoned house or an old abandoned, I don't know what it is, something out in the woods somewhere, and he's graffitied it with all these very bizarre murals and things. And to soundtrack this little video, he'd put Flint on it from Morecambe, from our Morecambe record, which I think is how it got flagged to us. And you sort of pointed out that was really, really cool thing, and we sent him a message saying, thank you, that's really cool that you used our music, and really appreciate it. And he seemed like quite a nice chap. We didn't really know anything about him, but we saw some of his other artwork, and he did some pretty bizarre artwork. So we said, would you do some artwork for our new EP? And he said yes. He'd never done anything like this before. He's from Canada. His name was Josh Rotz. I had a few conversations with him backwards and forwards. And yeah, he wasn't using computers or anything like that. He was still working in, I don't know what they call it, paints, crayons, I don't know. And then he sent me in the post these amazing paintings, which you can see on the On VHS EP cover for anybody who's got it. There was 4 panels that tell this sort of strange horror movie, kind of B-movie, weird little story. And yeah, they're amazing, and we have them framed.
You can't buy the EP anymore. I think we only ever got 100 done, didn't we?
Yeah, I think that was about it. Maybe we did the second run. I honestly can't remember.
Yeah. We are looking to reissue it at some point, but we don't know when. Obviously, things are a bit weird at the minute, so we'll probably just stick it on YouTube for people to listen to for free. Eventually, we'll get down to reissue it. I'd rather people heard it, and I don't think it's particularly appropriate time for too much commerce if we can help it. So, we'll just bung stuff out there for the moment, just put it on YouTube and that. So,
yeah.
Initially, when On VHS came out, we were doing like little pub shows, but after On VHS was when we started doing actual gigs, actual sort of gigs in front of people we didn't know, and that's playing. I think we supported Knife World initially quite early on at the Peel, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then we did the Peel, and we did a few sort of charity shows.
Some other places.
And the ice cream parlour where that bass amp didn't work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And then I remember the man said to you, he said to him, "Is there a bass amp?" He said, "There's not a hope of a bass amp."
Exactly what I said. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. Yeah.
Not only is it not a bass amp, there's not a hope of a bass amp.
Yeah, it was pretty definite. It's pretty definite about that. Yeah,
you had to run the bass through the PA, as I remember.
Yeah. Which just for anybody who knows about these things, DI'd bass with distortion on it sounds fantastic. It was straight into a PA
in front of 20 people in an ice cream parlour, wasn't it? In Stoke Newington. They were the sort of gigs we were doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway, On VHS comes out, got a really good review in Prog magazine, really good reviews in the sort of underground press and stuff. And then we made friends with Carvus and people like that, and that's the end of that part of the story, isn't it, really?
It is really, yeah. I do think, like you said, this really... We really should go back and reinvestigate some of these songs from the past. I mean, in fact, maybe I've said it before, I don't know, but if anybody has any particular favourites of ours that we're not playing live at the minute, you should let us know, because sometimes we're the worst people to decide. So it's good to hear. It's good to hear from other people what they're enjoying off the old records and stuff, and what we should play live. Because I'd love to have a go at part 3.
I'd like to do part 3 as well. I think it's a really nice tune. I think it's got that sort of shoegazy, fuzzy, Smashing Pumpkins, Slow Dive, My Bloody Valentine thing to it. For me to hear that and think, that's what I want to do now, is a bit like, that's slightly ironic, isn't it? There you go.
Right first time round. Well, there you go. So that's On VHS, and that's the end of this episode. So take care of yourselves.
Yeah, and what word do you want people to say at the end?
Let's say brewery.
Brewery in there today.
Brewery.
I'd like to see the word. If you've made it all the way to the end of the podcast, I'd like to see you put the word brewery in the comments. And those questions and answers from the Facebook group, we will answer in a special podcast. So keep the questions coming. We like the weird stuff, so just keep them coming. Not too weird. Keep them coming. And then I've opened the door there, haven't I?
Yeah, keep it clean. Keep it clean.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
I don't mind it weird, but come on.
Yeah, we don't work blue. We don't work blue.
Don't do blue, no. Are we done, Kevin?
I think we're done, mate. So until next time, stay safe. See you later.